The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Traveling to international destinations involves inherent risks, including but not limited to fluctuating safety conditions, changing local laws, health risks, and logistical challenges. This content does not constitute professional travel, legal, medical, or financial advice. We strongly recommend that all viewers conduct their own due diligence, monitor official government travel advisories such as those provided by the United States Department of State and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and consult with qualified professionals regarding vaccinations, travel insurance, and entry requirements before making any bookings or embarking on a trip to Zanzibar or Tanzania. Most Americans will spend over $5,000 on a generic Caribbean vacation this year, blissfully unaware that for nearly the same investment, they could be standing on the literal edge of the world in a place where history, spice, and turquoise waters collide in a way that makes the Bahamas look like a local swimming hole. There is a specific stretch of coastline on the northern tip of an island called Unguja where the tide recedes so far it reveals a lunar-like landscape of coral lagoons and ancient shipwrecks, a phenomenon that has baffled explorers for centuries and continues to hide secrets that the average tourist will never see. You have been told that true exotic luxury is reserved for the ultra-wealthy in the Maldives or the oversaturated influencer hubs of Bali, but historical trends in global tourism suggest a massive shift is occurring. We are currently witnessing the rise of the last frontier of accessible luxury, and if you are not paying attention to the archipelago of Zanzibar right now, you are essentially missing out on the greatest travel arbitrage opportunity of the 21st century. The problem most American travelers face today is the identity crisis of the modern vacation. You want the white sand and the five-star service, but you are tired of the sanitized, cookie-cutter resorts in Mexico, where the only cultural experience is a themed buffet. You crave something visceral, something that feels like an actual adventure, yet you are understandably hesitant about the logistical nightmare of navigating East Africa. This video solves that specific dilemma. We are moving past the surface-level travel vlogs and entering a masterclass on why Zanzibar is the definitive answer to the American traveler's search for meaning, luxury, and value. By the end of this series, you will understand the precise mechanics of planning a trip to the Spice Islands, from navigating the labyrinthine alleys of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, to identifying the specific coral atolls that offer world-class diving without the crowds of the Great Barrier Reef. We are going to deconstruct the myth of the unattainable African safari beach combo and show you the potential outcomes of a meticulously planned itinerary that balances high-end comfort with raw, unfiltered history. To understand why Zanzibar belongs on your bucket list, we first have to address the misconception of distance. For a traveler departing from New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago, the journey to East Africa is often viewed as a Herculean task. However, when you analyze the flight paths of major carriers like Qatar Airways, Emirates, or Ethiopian Airlines, you begin to see a pattern of extreme efficiency. Historical trends in aviation have turned what was once a multi-day expedition into a seamless 24-hour transit, involving some of the best business and economy class products in the sky. If you can handle a flight to Hawaii from the East Coast, you are already halfway to the Indian Ocean. The psychological barrier of the long-haul flight is the only thing standing between you and a destination that offers a higher density of culture and natural beauty per square mile than almost anywhere else on the planet. Let us look at the physical landscape of the island itself, specifically the sand. This might seem like a minor detail, but for the discerning traveler, it is everything. Zanzibar is famous for its brilliant white, powdery sand, but there is a scientific reason why it feels different from the sand in Florida or California. The sand here is composed of microscopic coral fragments that do not retain heat. Even in the height of the February sun, when temperatures hover around 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you can walk barefoot across the beach without the slightest discomfort. This is the kind of granular detail that separates a good vacation from a legendary one. When you combine this cool sand phenomenon with the blue hot waters of the Indian Ocean, a shade of turquoise so vivid it looks digitally altered, you begin to understand the sensory overload that Zanzibar provides. But Zanzibar is not just a beach destination. It is a living museum. For the American audience, the concept of history is often measured in centuries, but in Stone Town, the cultural heart of Zanzibar, history is measured in millennia. This city is a labyrinth of winding alleys, intricately carved teak doors, and the lingering scent of cloves and cinnamon. It is a place where the architectural footprints of the Omani Sultanate, British colonialists, and Persian traders are stacked on top of one another. When you walk through these streets, you are not just a tourist. You are a witness to the fusion of African, Arab, and Indian cultures that has remained largely unchanged for the last 200 years. We will be diving deep into the specific case studies of Stone Town's architecture and why the Zanzibar door is more than just a photo opportunity. It is a social hierarchy etched in wood. Furthermore, we must discuss the economic value proposition. In the current economic climate, the purchasing power of the US dollar is a critical factor in travel planning. While prices in traditional European summer destinations have skyrocketed, Zanzibar offers a unique form of luxury arbitrage. We are talking about 5-star boutique villas with private plunge pools and personal butlers that cost a fraction of what you would pay for a standard room in Maui. This is not about being cheap. It is about the potential outcomes of reallocating your travel budget to a region where your currency provides significantly more leverage for high-end experiences. We will analyze the specific price-to-value ratios of the island's premier resorts, comparing them to domestic American alternatives to show you exactly how much further your investment goes in the Spice Islands. We also have to address the why now factor. The world is changing, and the window for experiencing authentic Zanzibar is narrowing as infrastructure development accelerates. New airports are being built, and major international hotel chains are beginning to plant flags on the more remote stretches of the coast. While this brings comfort and accessibility, it also threatens the very seclusion that makes the island so special. Historical trends in destinations like Tulum or the Amalfi Coast show us that there is a golden era for every travel destination. A period where the infrastructure is mature enough for luxury, but the soul of the place hasn't been diluted by mass tourism. Zanzibar is currently in that golden era. In the coming segments, we are going to break down the logistics of the stopover hack, showing you how to turn a long flight into 2 vacations by spending 48 hours in cities like Doha or Dubai before touching down in the tropics. We will explore the culinary landscape, from the high-stakes environment of the Forodani Gardens night market to the refined spice tours that explain why this tiny archipelago once controlled the global trade of cloves. We will even touch on the safety protocols and health considerations that every American needs to know to navigate the region with confidence and ease. This is the first step in your journey to the Indian Ocean. We are moving beyond the postcards and into the technical, cultural, and emotional reality of Zanzibar. Prepare yourself, because the version of paradise you think you know is about to be completely rewritten. Imagine you are an American traveler named Michael, living in a fast-paced city like Austin or Seattle in the spring of 2026. You have spent the last 3 years hearing about the same overcrowded Mediterranean beaches and the same overpriced Caribbean resorts. You are looking for something that shifts your perspective, but you are also worried about the logistical nightmare of traveling to a different continent. This is where the 2026 travel landscape favors the prepared American. Historical trends show that airline connectivity to East Africa has reached an all-time high. Major carriers have optimized their hubs in Doha, Dubai, and Istanbul to ensure that the transit time for a passenger leaving from JFK or LAX is surprisingly manageable. When Michael books his flight, he is not just buying a ticket. He is participating in a high-efficiency logistical framework designed to bridge the gap between Western comfort and the raw beauty of the Indian Ocean. Let us look at a specific case study of the modern transit experience. In 2026, the stopover has become a tactical advantage rather than a nuisance. If Michael chooses a carrier like Qatar Airways, he is looking at a 14-hour flight to Hamad International Airport, followed by a short, 5-hour hop to Zanzibar. During that layover, he is not sitting on a plastic chair. He is accessing world-class lounges that feel more like 5-star hotels. This 2-leg journey is the secret weapon of the seasoned traveler. It provides a natural break that helps the human body adjust to the 9-hour time difference. By the time Michael touches down at Abeda Mani Karum International Airport, he has bypassed the jet lag that usually ruins the first 3 days of a vacation. He is hitting the ground running in a destination that is geographically distant, but logistically closer than ever before. Upon arrival, the first thing Michael notices is the 2026 upgrade to the Zanzibar airport infrastructure. The recently expanded Terminal 3 is a testament to the Tanzanian government's commitment to high-end tourism. The visa process for American citizens is a streamlined digital experience. You no longer have to wait in hours-long queues with crumpled dollar bills. Historical trends in African digital governance have led to a seamless e-visa system where your entry is pre-approved and your biometric data is scanned in seconds. This ease of entry is a critical component of why Zanzibar is outperforming traditional hotspots. For the American traveler who values their time as much as their money, this frictionless arrival is the first indicator that they have made the right choice. Now, consider the economic reality Michael faces. In 2026, the United States dollar remains a dominant force in the Tanzanian economy. While the local currency is the Tanzanian shilling, the US dollar is widely accepted and often preferred for larger transactions like hotel stays and private tours. However, the savvy traveler knows how to play the exchange rate to their advantage. Michael finds that by carrying a mix of crisp, post-$2,600 bills and a high-limit travel credit card with no foreign transaction fees, he can navigate the island with extreme financial agility. Case studies of American tourists in 2025 showed that those who utilized local currency for small purchases in the markets of Stone Town saved upwards of 15% compared to those who relied solely on USD. This is the kind of practical data that allows a traveler to extend their stay or upgrade their experiences without increasing their overall budget. But let us move beyond the numbers and into the visceral experience of the first 24 hours. Imagine if Michael decides to start his journey not on the beach, but in the heart of Stone Town. He steps out of his transport and is immediately enveloped by the scent of the island. This is not a metaphorical scent. It is a literal heavy aroma of drying cloves, nutmeg, and salt water. The streets of Stone Town are so narrow that two people can barely walk abreast, and motorized vehicles are largely absent. This creates a sonic environment that is jarringly quiet for someone used to the hum of American traffic. Instead of car horns, Michael hears the call to prayer echoing from ancient minarets, the laughter of children playing with homemade wooden hoops, and the rhythmic clicking of bicycle chains. He checks into a converted merchant's palace, a building that has stood for over 200 years. The walls are 3 feet thick, made of coral rag and lime, providing a natural insulation that keeps the interior cool even in the tropical heat. His room features a hand-carved Zanzibar bed so high he needs a small step to climb into it, draped in fine mosquito netting that catches the breeze from the ceiling fan. This is the moment the American traveler realizes they are not in a resort. They are in a living history book. The potential outcomes of staying in a heritage property versus a modern hotel are profound. Michael isn't just a spectator. He is an inhabitant of a UNESCO World Heritage site. He is breathing the same air as the explorers and spice traders who shaped the modern world. As the sun begins to set on his first day, Michael heads to the rooftop of his hotel for a sundowner. From this vantage point, he can see the chaotic geometry of Stone Town's roofs, dotted with satellite dishes and laundry lines, stretching out toward the deep blue of the harbor. He watches the dhows, traditional wooden sailing vessels with triangular lateen sails, glide across the water just as they have for over 1,000 years. There is a specific historical trend here. While the world around Zanzibar has modernized, the maritime technology of the dhow has remained virtually unchanged. This persistence of tradition is what creates the island's unique atmosphere. It is a place where the 21st century exists only in the pockets of the people, while their hands and hearts remain tied to the rhythms of the ocean and the winds of the monsoon. But there is a shadow in this paradise that Michael has yet to encounter. As he sips his drink, he notices a small island on the horizon, glowing orange in the twilight. The locals call it Canggu, but to the rest of the world, it is known as Prison Island. It is a place with a dark history that evolved into something entirely unexpected. Michael hears a rumor from the hotel manager about the island's current inhabitants, giant creatures that have lived for over a century and a half, some of which may have witnessed the very colonial history Michael is currently reading about. He realizes that Zanzibar is not just a place of beauty, but a place of incredible biological and historical anomalies. Tomorrow, Michael will have to decide. Will he descend into the dark history of the old slave market, a place that shaped the global economy in ways most Americans are never taught in school? Or will he head north, toward the legendary beaches of Nungwi, where the water is said to be so clear that it creates an optical illusion of boats floating in midair? The choice he makes will determine whether his trip is a standard vacation or a deep dive into the soul of an archipelago. But there is a secret about the northern tides that Michael doesn't know yet, a phenomenon that can trap an unwary traveler or reveal a path to a hidden sandbank that only appears for 2 hours a day. The true masterclass of Zanzibar travel is about to begin. The gravity of history is the first thing Michael encounters on his second morning in Stone Town. He decides to forego the beach for a few more hours to visit the Anglican Cathedral of Christ Church, which is built directly on the site of the world's last open slave market. This is a crucial stop for any American traveler, because it provides a necessary context for the resilience and culture of the Zanzibari people. Historical trends in global trade show that Zanzibar was once the primary hub for the East African slave trade, a dark chapter that ended only in 1873. As Michael stands in the nave of the cathedral, he looks down at a small circle of white marble on the floor. This marks the exact spot where the whipping post once stood. Step by step, he descends into the holding cells located beneath the cathedral. These are cramped, low-ceilinged stone chambers where dozens of individuals were kept in horrific conditions before being auctioned. For Michael, an American coming from a country with its own complex history of slavery, this moment is a profound case study in the universal struggle for human dignity. The air in these cells is heavy and cool, a stark contrast to the tropical heat outside. This educational experience is not meant to be a somber deterrent from the vacation, but rather a deepening of it. It transforms Zanzibar from a mere resort destination into a place of significant global importance. But the complexity of the island does not end with its shadows. Michael walks back out into the sunlight and heads toward the harbor to catch a small motorized boat to Canggu Island, commonly known as Prison Island. Historically, this island was intended to hold rebellious slaves and later served as a quarantine station for yellow fever. However, the potential outcomes of this dark history led to an unexpected biological treasure. Imagine if you were transported to an island where the residents are not humans, but prehistoric giants. Upon landing, Michael is greeted by the Aldabra giant tortoises. These creatures were a gift from the British governor of the Seychelles in 1919. In 2026, some of these tortoises are over 160 years old. Michael squats down next to a tortoise named Tower, who was already a mature adult when the American Civil War was ending. He watches as Tower moves with a slow, deliberate grace, his wrinkled skin looking like ancient parchment. There is a specific protocol for interacting with these giants. You can gently scratch their long, leathery necks, causing them to stretch out in a state of reptilian bliss. This is a deep dive into longevity. For Michael, who is used to the rapid-fire pace of a 2026 digital lifestyle, being in the presence of an animal that measures its life in centuries is a radical shift in perspective. After returning to the mainland, it is time for Michael to experience the northern coast, the area most famous for its postcard-perfect vistas. He arranges for a private transfer from Stone Town to Nungwi, a drive that takes about 90 minutes through the lush interior of the island. Along the way, he passes through small villages where the 2026 economy is visibly thriving. He sees roadside stalls overflowing with pineapples, jackfruit, and red bananas. Historical trends in Zanzibari agriculture show that the interior of the island remains the primary engine for spice production, even as tourism dominates the coast. As the car pulls into Nungwi, the landscape changes abruptly. The dense greenery gives way to a blinding white shoreline. This is where Michael encounters the phenomenon of the Zanzibar tides. On the east coast of the island, the tide can recede for over a mile, leaving the reef exposed and making swimming impossible for several hours a day. However, Nungwi and its neighbor, Kendwa, are geographically unique. Because they sit on the tip of the island where the ocean floor drops off sharply, the tide remains relatively stable. This is why these two locations are the most sought-after real estate on the island for American travelers who prioritize ocean access. Michael checks into a beachfront bungalow and immediately walks toward the water. This is where he sees the famous optical illusion of the floating boats. Because the water is so devoid of particulate matter and the sand is so white, the shadows of the dhows are cast clearly on the seabed several feet below. From a distance, the boats appear to be hovering in mid-air. This is not just a photographic trick. It is a result of the specific marine chemistry of the Indian Ocean in this region. The absence of large river runoffs means the water maintains a level of clarity that rivals the most remote atolls of French Polynesia. Now, let us analyze the technical details of the Nungwi tide. While it is more stable than the east coast, there is still a vertical shift of several feet. Step by step, Michael watches as the afternoon tide begins to pull back. As it does, it reveals the inner workings of the local economy. Groups of women in brightly colored hijabs walk out onto the exposed flats to harvest seaweed. This is a case study in sustainable aquaculture. The seaweed is tied to wooden stakes and harvested for export to international markets for use in cosmetics and food thickeners. For Michael, this is a lesson in the multi-layered use of the ocean. The same water he swims in is a lifeline for thousands of local families. As evening approaches, the social atmosphere of Nungwi begins to shift. This is not the loud, neon-soaked nightlife of South Beach. Instead, it is a sophisticated, barefoot culture. Michael finds himself at a beach bar constructed entirely of driftwood and palm thatch. He orders a drink made with local sugarcane and lime, sitting on a beanbag chair as the sun begins to dip toward the horizon. In 2026, the sunset in Nungwi remains one of the most consistent and spectacular natural shows on Earth. Because there is no landmass to the west for thousands of miles, the sun descends into a perfectly flat horizon, turning the sky into a gradient of violet, orange, and deep crimson. But as Michael sits there, he notices something strange. A group of local fishermen are gathering on the beach, but they aren't looking at the sunset. They are looking at the sky, pointing toward a specific formation of clouds. One of the staff members leans over and tells Michael that the changing winds signify the arrival of the Kusi, the southern monsoon. This wind doesn't just bring rain. It changes the entire migration pattern of the Indian Ocean's most elusive predator. Michael had planned on a simple snorkeling trip tomorrow, but he is told that if he is willing to venture further out, past the safety of the lagoon, he might encounter something that few humans ever see in the wild. He is told about a secret sandbank called Nakapenda, which translates to "I love you" in Swahili. It is a strip of pure white sand that exists only during low tide. When the tide rises, it vanishes completely, reclaiming everything left behind by visitors. But there is a warning. The currents around the vanishing sandbanks are notoriously unpredictable, and the transition from low to high tide happens with a speed that can catch the unobservant traveler off guard. Michael realizes that he is about to move from the role of a tourist to the role of an explorer. The next phase of his masterclass will require him to understand the raw power of the Indian Ocean, a force that can offer unparalleled beauty or absolute isolation in a matter of minutes. The question is he ready to leave the shore behind? Michael wakes up before dawn in Nungwi, the air thick with the scent of salt and the distant sound of the Kusi wind whistling through the palm fronds. In the travel landscape of 2026, the American traveler is no longer satisfied with staying on the shore. They want to be part of the elements. Michael has arranged for a private expedition to the Nemba Atoll, a protected marine conservation area located off the northeast coast. To get there, he must board a traditional dhow. But this is not just any wooden boat. Historical trends in Zanzibari craftsmanship have seen a resurgence in the use of seasoned teak and mahogany, reinforced with modern marine sealants that allow these ancient designs to handle the choppy outer currents of the Indian Ocean with surprising stability. As the dhow pulls away from the beach, Michael watches the shoreline of Nungwi recede. Step by step, the water transitions from a pale milky turquoise to a deep bruised indigo. This color shift is a technical indicator of the ocean floor's topography, dropping from 20 feet to over 200 feet in a matter of seconds. The potential outcomes of this deep water transition are immediate. The air temperature drops by 5 degrees, and the swell becomes more rhythmic and powerful. For an American used to the controlled environments of coastal Florida or the predictable waves of the Jersey Shore, this is a lesson in the raw, unshielded scale of the Indian Ocean. The Nemba Atoll is a case study in high-stakes marine conservation. While the island itself is private and home to one of the most exclusive resorts in the world, the surrounding reef is a public treasure managed under strict ecological guidelines. In 2026, these regulations have been tightened to prevent the coral bleaching seen in other parts of the world. Michael's guide explains the 2026 permit system, where every boat is tracked via GPS to ensure that the carrying capacity of the reef is never exceeded. This data-driven approach to tourism is why Zanzibar's reefs remain vibrant, while others have faded. As Michael slides into the water, the first thing he notices is the silence, broken only by the crackling sound of parrotfish grazing on the coral. Imagine if you were suspended in a liquid crystal. The visibility at Nemba often exceeds 100 feet, allowing Michael to see the intricate architecture of the reef plateaus. He observes schools of yellowback fusiliers moving in a coordinated dance to evade a hunting bluefin trevally. This is a masterclass in marine biology happening in real time. He identifies brain coral, staghorn coral, and the rare green sea turtles that use this atoll as a sanctuary. Historical trends in the region show that the turtle population has stabilized thanks to community-led nesting programs on the mainland. For Michael, seeing a century-old turtle glide past him is a reminder that his presence here is a privilege facilitated by decades of local conservation work. After 2 hours of snorkeling, the expedition moves toward the vanishing sandbank of Nakapenda. This is where the technical mastery of the local captains becomes evident. Navigating to a piece of land that only exists for a few hours a day requires a deep understanding of the lunar cycle and the shifting sand currents. Michael's captain uses a combination of traditional landmarks and a 2026 mobile navigation app to pinpoint the exact location where the sandbank is beginning to emerge from the receding tide. As the dhow anchors, the sandbank is nothing more than a thin white line on the horizon. But as Michael walks onto the shore, the land begins to grow. This is the ephemeral reality of Zanzibar. Step by step, the water retreats, leaving behind a pristine, untouched desert in the middle of the ocean. There are no buildings, no trees, and no permanent structures. It is a blank slate of coral sand. The crew begins to set up a temporary camp, using wooden poles and white canvas to create shade. They start a small fire using coconut husks to grill fresh lobster, calamari, and snapper caught just hours ago. This culinary experience is a case study in the zero-kilometer food movement. For the American traveler, who is often disconnected from the source of their food, sitting on a disappearing island eating seafood seasoned with salt from the very water they are looking at is a transformative experience. The flavors are intense and unmasked by heavy sauces, just lime, chili, and the smoke from the coconut shells. Historical trends in Zanzibari cuisine emphasize this simplicity, a tradition that has survived the influx of international hotel chains and maintains the island's authentic identity. However, the beauty of the sandbank is tethered to a strict deadline. Michael watches as the captain constantly checks the waterline against a specific coral head. In 2026, the speed of the rising tide can be accelerated by the Kusi wind, which pushes massive volumes of water toward the shore. The potential outcomes of overstaying on Nakapenda are not just logistical, they are hazardous. As the tide turns, the sandbank begins to shrink. The edges blur as the waves start to wash over the higher points. The crew moves with practiced efficiency, packing the canvas and the cooking gear back onto the dhow. By the time Michael is back on the boat, the spot where he was just standing is once again covered by a foot of water. It is as if the island never existed. This cycle of appearance and disappearance is a metaphor for the Zanzibari experience, a place that reveals its secrets only to those who are willing to time their arrival perfectly and respect the rhythms of the natural world. As the dhow sails back toward the mainland, Michael reflects on the sheer complexity of the ecosystem he just witnessed. He has seen the intersection of high-end conservation tech and thousand-year-old sailing traditions. But as they approach the coast, he notices a change in the landscape. Beyond the white beaches of the north, the interior of the island looms dark and green. He remembers the scent from Stone Town, the cloves and the nutmeg, and realizes he has only seen the perimeter of this world. His guide mentions that the true power of Zanzibar lies not in its water, but in its soil. He speaks of the Jozani forest, the last indigenous forest on the island, where a specific species of primate exists that can be found nowhere else on the planet. These creatures are said to have a digestive system so specialized they can eat charcoal to neutralize the toxins in their diet. Michael realizes that the deep dive is just beginning. To understand why this island is a global bucket list essential, he must leave the turquoise water behind and head into the humid, emerald heart of the forest. But there is a warning. The forest is home to more than just monkeys. There are legends of a predator that the locals speak of only in whispers, a creature that is said to be the ghost of the island's ancient past. Tomorrow, Michael will find out if those legends are grounded in biological reality or cultural myth. The transition from the salt-sprayed coastline of Nungwi to the humid, emerald interior of the Jozani Chwaka Bay National Park is a sensory shift that most American travelers are unprepared for. In the spring of 2026, Michael boards a private vehicle for the one-hour southward journey, watching the landscape morph from white sand to dense, ancient groundwater forest. This is the only indigenous forest remaining on the island, a prehistoric pocket of biodiversity that serves as a case study in ecological resilience. As Michael steps out of the car, the air becomes heavy and still, smelling of damp earth and rotting vegetation, the literal scent of life recycling itself. He is no longer in the Zanzibar of luxury resorts. He is in the Zanzibar of evolutionary anomalies. The primary objective for any visitor to Jozani is the Red Colobus monkey, or Colobus kirkii. This is a species that exists nowhere else on Earth. Historical trends in primatology show that these monkeys were once part of a larger population that stretched across the African mainland, but they have been isolated on Zanzibar for at least 1,000 years, leading to a distinct evolutionary path. Michael's guide, a local expert trained in the 2026 conservation protocols, explains the first major anomaly. The red colobus lacks a thumb. The name colobus is derived from the Greek word for mutilated, referring to the small stump where a thumb would normally be. This adaptation allows them to move through the canopy with a hooking motion, a high-efficiency method of travel that prevents them from getting snagged on the dense mahogany branches. But the deep dive into their biology reveals a more shocking trait. Imagine if your primary source of nutrition was poisonous. The red colobus feeds on a variety of leaves, including those from the Indian almond and mango trees, which contain high levels of cyanide and phenolic compounds. To survive, these monkeys have developed a specialized four-chambered stomach, much like a cow, to ferment the vegetation. However, the fermentation process alone isn't enough to neutralize the toxins. This is where the charcoal comes in. Michael watches as a group of monkeys descends toward the edge of a nearby village or scavenges through charred tree stumps. They purposefully seek out and consume charcoal. The carbon in the charcoal binds to the toxins in their stomach, neutralizing them before they can enter the bloodstream. This behavioral adaptation is a case study in animal intelligence, and is one of the few recorded instances of primates using a non-food substance as a medicinal supplement. As Michael moves deeper into the mahogany section of the forest, the guide lowers his voice. This is the territory of the legend we discussed, the Zanzibar leopard. For decades, the Zanzibar leopard was officially declared extinct, a victim of a coordinated extermination campaign in the mid-20th century fueled by local superstition. Historical trends in the region's folklore suggest that these leopards were viewed as familiars or pets of witches, used to carry out malevolent deeds against villagers. This led to a state-sponsored cull that seemingly wiped the species from the map. However, in 2018, a camera trap set by a documentary crew captured blurry footage of what appeared to be a leopard, reigniting a global debate. In 2026, the scientific community remains divided. While no physical specimen has been captured, local sightings continue to be reported in the densest parts of Jozani. Michael learns about the 2026 Leopard Protocol, a series of camera trap arrays and environmental DNA testing sites distributed throughout the park. The potential outcomes of proving the leopard's existence would be seismic, likely resulting in the forest being elevated to a higher tier of international protection. For an American traveler, standing in a forest that might still harbor a ghost species creates an atmosphere of high-stakes mystery that no sanitized safari park can replicate. The expedition then moves from the dry forest to the mangrove boardwalk. This is a transition between two worlds. The mangroves of Chwaka Bay are a masterclass in botanical engineering. Michael walks along a raised wooden path that winds through three distinct species: the red, white, and black mangroves. Each has a different strategy for surviving in the salt-saturated mud. He looks down at the pneumatophores, the snorkel-like roots of the black mangroves that stick up out of the mud to breathe air during high tide. The red mangroves, by contrast, use massive prop roots that look like tangled spider legs to stabilize themselves against the incoming Indian Ocean swells. Step by step, the guide explains the economic and environmental data behind this swamp. In 2026, these mangroves are recognized as one of the most efficient carbon sinks on the planet, sequestering up to 10 times more carbon than terrestrial forests. For the people of Zanzibar, they are a literal shield, absorbing the energy of storm surges and protecting the inland villages from erosion. Michael sees hundreds of tiny fiddler crabs scurrying across the mud, their oversized claws waving in a rhythmic display. This is the nursery of the ocean. The tangled roots provide a safe haven for juvenile fish and shrimp that will eventually migrate to the reefs Michael explored yesterday. But there is a cultural layer to Jozani that Michael must also navigate. He meets a local mganga, or traditional healer, who lives on the periphery of the park. This is not a tourist performance. It is a glimpse into a medical system that has existed for centuries. The healer explains the uses of the various plants Michael has just seen. The bark of certain trees is used to treat malaria symptoms. The sap of others is used as an antiseptic. This indigenous knowledge is currently being studied by international pharmaceutical researchers in 2026 as part of a benefit-sharing agreement with the Zanzibari government. It is a reminder that the forest is not just a collection of trees and monkeys, but a living pharmacy. As the humidity reaches its peak and the midday sun filters through the canopy in sharp, dusty shafts of light, Michael feels the weight of the island's interior. He has moved from the history of Stone Town to the marine biology of the reefs, and now to the evolutionary mystery of the forest. But he realizes there is one final piece of the Zanzibar puzzle he hasn't touched. The guide hands him a small dried bud. It is hard, dark, and shaped like a tiny nail. When Michael crushes it between his fingers, an intense, medicinal, and sweet aroma fills the air. This is a clove. To the world, it is a spice. To Zanzibar, it was once the equivalent of oil, a commodity so valuable it caused wars, built palaces, and reshaped the demographics of the entire Indian Ocean. Michael has seen the wild side of the island, but he has yet to see the engineered side. He is told that to truly understand why Zanzibar is the Spice Island, he must travel to the hidden plantations of the north-central hills, where the soil is stained red and the trees are hundreds of years old. But there is a secret about the clove harvest that the guide mentions as they walk back to the vehicle. It is a process that involves heights, danger, and a specific seasonal timing that determines the quality of the entire global supply. He also mentions a legendary plantation house, abandoned since the 1964 revolution, that is said to still hold the records of the original spice lords. Tomorrow, Michael will trade the forest for the farm, and he will discover that the history of what we eat is just as dramatic as the history of where we travel. The scent is leading him toward a place where the air itself is worth a fortune, but he will have to climb to get it. Michael leaves the humid shade of the Jozani forest and heads toward the Kizimbani region, the agricultural heart of the island where the soil turns a deep, oxidized red. This is the laterite soil, rich in iron and aluminum, which provides the perfect chemical foundation for the spice trees that gave this archipelago its nickname. In the 2026 travel economy, the American visitor is often looking for the origin story of the products they consume daily, and there is no better case study than the Zanzibari Shamba, or spice farm. Michael steps out of his vehicle and is immediately greeted by a wall of scent that is vastly different from the salty air of the coast. Here the air is thick with the competing aromas of crushed leaves, drying bark and ripening fruit. To understand why this land is a global bucket list essential, Michael must first grasp the historical trends of the spice trade. In the mid-19th century, Sultan Syed Said moved the capital of the Omani Empire from Muscat to Zanzibar specifically because of this soil. He realized that the potential outcomes of a clove monopoly would be astronomical. He issued a decree that for every coconut tree planted, 3 clove trees must be planted alongside it. By the 1850s, Zanzibar was producing nearly 80% of the world's cloves. As Michael walks through the groves of Syzygium aromaticum, the clove trees, he sees the descendants of those original plantings. These are not small bushes, they are towering evergreen giants that can reach heights of 40 or 50 feet. The climb that the guide mentioned is the most dangerous and technical part of the harvest. Michael watches as a local harvester named Juma prepares to ascend. In 2026, despite the availability of modern ladders, the traditional method of free climbing is still preferred to avoid damaging the brittle branches of the clove trees. Juma uses a simple loop of sisal rope around his feet to create tension against the trunk. Step by step, he moves up the tree with a fluid, terrifying grace, reaching the upper canopy where the clusters of flower buds grow. These buds must be picked at a very specific moment, just before the pink petals open to reveal the white stamens. If the flower opens, the essential oil content drops, and the market value of the spice plummets. From the ground, Michael watches Juma navigate the thin outer branches 30 feet in the air. This is a high-stakes operation. A single misstep can be fatal, yet the harvesters move with the confidence of people who have been doing this for generations. Once the clusters are picked, they are brought down in woven baskets. This is where the manual labor intensifies. Every single bud must be hand-separated from its stem. Michael tries his hand at it and realizes the sheer volume of work required to produce just 1 pound of dried cloves. It takes approximately 4 pounds of green buds to yield 1 pound of the dried spice we find on American grocery shelves. Next, Michael is led to the drying floors. These are large mats made of braided palm fronds laid out in the direct tropical sun. As the cloves dry, they turn from a pale pink to a deep mahogany brown. This is the moment when the air truly becomes worth a fortune. The concentration of eugenol, the primary chemical compound in clove oil, is so high that Michael can feel a slight numbing sensation in his throat just by breathing near the drying mats. In 2026, clove oil is a critical component not just in cooking, but in the global dental and pharmaceutical industries as an antiseptic and analgesic. Historical trends show that the price of cloves can fluctuate wildly based on the monsoon rains, making the harvest a period of intense economic anxiety and potential reward for the local farmers. But the shamba is a masterclass in intercropping, a sustainable farming technique that predates the modern organic movement. Michael's guide shows him the relationship between the various plants. He points to a vine climbing up the trunk of a tall tree. This is Piper nigrum, the black pepper vine. He explains that black, white, and green pepper all come from the same plant. The difference lies in the timing of the harvest and the method of processing. He then digs into the earth to reveal a root that looks like a gnarled hand. This is turmeric, the golden spice. In 2026, turmeric has seen a massive surge in demand in the United States due to its anti-inflammatory properties, and the Zanzibari variety is prized for its high curcumin content. The deep dive continues as Michael encounters the nutmeg tree. Imagine if you found a fruit that looked like a pale apricot, but inside was a secret. The guide slices the fruit open to reveal a dark, shiny nut wrapped in a vibrant neon red lacy covering. This red lattice is mace, a completely separate spice with a more delicate, floral flavor than the nutmeg inside the shell. This is the kind of botanical complexity that the average consumer never sees. Michael learns about the historical wars fought over nutmeg in the Banda Islands, and how its introduction to Zanzibar shifted the global balance of power. Then comes the vanilla. This is perhaps the most technical case study in the entire farm. Vanilla is an orchid, and in Zanzibar, it has no natural pollinators. Every single vanilla flower must be hand-pollinated by a human being using a small wooden needle. This must happen within a 4-hour window on the one day a year the flower blooms. Michael watches a demonstration of the Albius method, a technique discovered by a 12-year-old enslaved boy on Reunion Island in 1841. The precision required is staggering. If the pressure is too light, the flower won't take. If it is too heavy, the delicate reproductive organs are crushed. This labor-intensive process is why vanilla remains the second most expensive spice in the world after saffron. As the tour winds down, the guide leads Michael to the ruins of an old plantation house on the edge of the property. This is a skeleton of a building, its coral stone walls being slowly reclaimed by the roots of a massive banyan tree. This house was abandoned during the 1964 revolution, a period of radical social upheaval that saw the redistribution of land from the Arab elite to the African majority. As Michael walks through the empty door frames, he sees the remains of Italian marble floors and Omani plasterwork. This is a physical representation of the island's layered history, the beauty of the spice trade built on a foundation of extreme inequality. He finds a small rusted iron safe in what would have been the plantation office. The guide tells him that when these houses were vacated, many of the records of the original spice lords were lost or destroyed, but some families still keep the ancient ledgers that track the lineage of every clove tree on their land. For Michael, this adds a layer of ancestral weight to the experience. The spices are not just products. They are the legacy of a 100-year-old economic system that shaped the very map of the world. As the sun begins to set, the scent of the farm changes. The heat of the day has pulled the oils out of the leaves, and the air smells like a warm spiced tea. Michael has learned the mechanics of the harvest, the chemistry of the soil, and the tragedy of the history. But there is one more stop on his itinerary that brings all these flavors together in a way that defies logic. The guide points toward the coast, mentioning a place where the spices Michael just saw are used in a culinary setting so improbable it looks like a film set. It is a restaurant built on a single coral rock, surrounded by the ocean, where the menu changes with the height of the tide. But to get there, Michael is told he must cross a stretch of water that is home to a very specific type of nocturnal marine life that only emerges during the full moon. The transition from the red earth of the plantations to the dark water of the night market is about to reveal the final, most delicious secret of the island. He is heading to a place where the meal is a gamble against the rising sea. The journey from the red-earthed spice plantations to the Machambi Peninsula is a transition from the aromatic interior to a landscape defined by the aggressive whims of the Indian Ocean. Michael arrives at the shore of Machambi Pingwi just as the late afternoon light begins to turn the water into a sheet of hammered silver. Before him, perched atop a solitary coral outcrop that seems to have been dropped into the sea by a giant, is one of the most iconic culinary destinations on the planet, the Rock Restaurant. In the travel climate of 2026, this location serves as a primary case study in improbable architecture and the absolute necessity of understanding tidal mechanics before making a dinner reservation. Imagine if your walk to dinner was a literal trek across the ocean floor. At low tide, Michael can walk across the exposed seaweed and coral lagoons directly to the wooden staircase of the restaurant. However, the potential outcomes of his dining experience are entirely dictated by the moon. By the time he finishes his meal, the Indian Ocean will have surged back in, surrounding the rock with 6 feet of swirling turquoise water. This means his departure will not be on foot, but by a small hand-rowed wooden boat. This tidal shift is a technical reality that defines the Zanzibari coastline, where the vertical range can reach up to 4 meters, or over 13 feet. For the American traveler, this is a masterclass in living with the rhythm of the planet, rather than trying to override it with technology. As Michael climbs the stairs and takes a seat on the outdoor terrace, he is presented with a menu that is a direct reflection of the spice farms he just visited. He orders the signature lobster, which is prepared with a reduction of Madagascar vanilla and Zanzibari cloves. This fusion is not a modern invention. It is a culinary manifestation of historical trends. For centuries, the Omani and Persian influence on the island has blended with local Swahili techniques, creating a flavor profile that is simultaneously savory, sweet, and intensely aromatic. Michael notices that the lobster was caught that morning by the very fisherman he saw earlier in Nungwi. This is a closed-loop food system where the distance from the ocean to the plate is measured in yards, not miles. But the real deep dive into the island's soul happens after the sun sets, when Michael returns to Stone Town for the nightly ritual at Forodani Gardens. In 2026, Forodani remains the social and culinary epicenter of the archipelago. As the call to prayer fades, dozens of vendors in white aprons and chef hats emerge to set up their stalls, turning the waterfront into a high-octane open-air kitchen. The air is suddenly filled with the smoke of charcoal grills and the rhythmic tapping of metal spatulas against iron griddles. This is not just a tourist market. It is a case study in the communal identity of the Zanzibari people. Michael walks toward a stall where a young man is performing a mesmerizing technical feat with a ball of dough. This is the creation of the Zanzibar pizza, a dish that has very little in common with the Italian variety found in New York or Chicago. Step by step, Michael watches the process. The chef rolls a small piece of dough until it is paper-thin and translucent. He places it on the hot, oiled griddle and begins to layer ingredients: minced beef or chicken, chopped onions, green peppers, a wedge of creamy Laughing Cow cheese, and a single egg cracked directly into the center. The technical mastery lies in the folding. Using 2 spatulas, the chef folds the edges of the dough over the filling to create a perfect, square parcel. He then flips it repeatedly, allowing the exterior to become shatteringly crisp, while the inside remains a molten, savory custard. In 2026, the potential outcomes of this meal are highly dependent on the vendor's secret sauce, usually a blend of mango chili and local mayonnaise. For Michael, eating a Zanzibar pizza while sitting on a stone seawall overlooking the darkened harbor is a sensory experience that costs less than $5, but provides more cultural insight than any 5-star resort buffet. However, the true centerpiece of the Forodani experience is the urojo, often called the Zanzibar mix. This dish is a complex engineering project in a bowl. Michael watches as the vendor starts with a base of warm, yellowish flour-based soup flavored with mango and ginger. To this he adds a dizzying array of textures: crispy bhajias, fried lentil balls, boiled potato cubes, shavings of cassava crackers, a spoonful of red-hot chutney, and a splash of coconut milk. Historical trends suggest that urojo is a direct descendant of Indian street food, adapted over generations to incorporate the tropical ingredients of the East African coast. It is a dish that hits every flavor profile: acidic, spicy, salty, and sweet, in a single spoonful. As Michael navigates the market, he notices a vendor using a massive, ancient wooden press to extract juice from raw sugarcane stalks. He watches as the stalks are fed through the rollers, often with a piece of ginger and a lime included to balance the sweetness. The resulting liquid is a pale, frothy green and serves as the perfect coolant for the humid night. In 2026, sustainability protocols at Forodani mean that Michael is served in a biodegradable bowl with a wooden spoon, a shift from the plastic-heavy trends of the previous decade. This reflects a broader case study in how Zanzibar is balancing its surging tourism numbers with environmental preservation. But there was a mention of nocturnal marine life, and Michael finds it at the edge of the gardens where the seawall meets the water. During the full moon, the rising tide brings in thousands of small, bioluminescent organisms. As the local children dive from the seawall into the dark water, a nightly tradition known as the Forodani jumpers, their bodies ignite trails of neon blue light in the waves. This phosphorescence is a biological response to the movement, a phenomenon that Michael watches with the same awe as the tourists who travel to the Caribbean specifically for this sight. Here it is just a backdrop to a Tuesday night. As he walks back toward the labyrinth of Stone Town, the guide who accompanied him to the spice farm reappears. He tells Michael that while the food of the night is a delight, the true mystery of the Zanzibari night is found in the shadows of the old buildings, where a different kind of commerce used to take place. He points toward the heavy brass-studded doors that line the alleyways. He explains that some of these doors have symbols carved into them that were meant to ward off the very spirits they discussed in the forest. Michael realizes that he has experienced the island through his eyes, his ears, and his palate, but he has yet to experience it through his spirit. The guide mentions a specific ceremony that takes place on the outskirts of the city, a ritual involving drums, incense, and a state of trance that the locals believe can bridge the gap between the physical world and the afterlife. This is a part of Zanzibar that is rarely seen by Americans, a deep dive into the metaphysical traditions of the Swahili coast. But to witness it, Michael must agree to leave his camera behind and enter a space where the logic of 2026 no longer applies. The question is, can he handle the transition from the bright lights of the night market to the flickering torches of the spirit world? Tomorrow, the masterclass moves from the physical to the ethereal, and the true cost of entry is not money, but a complete suspension of disbelief. Michael leaves the flickering torches of the night market behind and enters a side of the archipelago that few Westerners ever experience with the required level of cultural humility. In the travel landscape of 2026, the American seeker is often moving toward what anthropologists call thin places, locations where the distance between the physical world and the spiritual world is perceived to be remarkably narrow. For Zanzibar, this spiritual infrastructure is not a relic of the past. It is a functioning daily reality that dictates everything from the timing of a wedding to the orientation of a new house. Michael travels south toward the village of Makunduchi, a place that serves as the definitive case study for the survival of pre-Islamic and Omani spiritual traditions. As the car moves away from the developed coastline, the 2026 infrastructure fades into a landscape of ancient baobab trees, their swollen trunks looking like the limbs of gray giants under the moonlight. Historical trends in the region suggest that these trees are more than just biological wonders. They are often regarded as the homes of jinns, or spirits. In Zanzibar, the belief in jinns is not a fairy tale. It is a sophisticated system of metaphysical understanding that has been integrated into the local practice of Islam for over a millennium. Michael learns that there are different categories of jinns, the white spirits that are benevolent and the black spirits that are capricious or malevolent. Understanding this distinction is essential for an American trying to navigate the social cues of a rural Zanzibari village. The specific event Michael has come to witness is a variation of the Mwaka Kagwa, a traditional festival that celebrates the arrival of the Shirazi New Year. While the main festival occurs in July, the spiritual preparation for such events is a year-round process. Imagine if your community had a designated day to physically and spiritually purge all the grievances and bad energy of the previous year. This is the core function of the ceremony Michael observes. He sees two groups of men engaging in a ritualized fight using the stems of banana trees. This is not an act of violence, but a high-stakes case study in communal catharsis. Step by step, the guide explains that by hitting each other with these soft, fibrous stems, the participants are symbolically resolving all the hidden conflicts of the village. The potential outcome is a clean slate for the community, ensuring that no lingering resentment can rot the social fabric in the coming year. The technical details of the ceremony are fascinating. The air is thick with the smoke of burning udi, a high-grade agarwood incense that has been traded across the Indian Ocean for centuries. The scent is heavy, sweet, and slightly medicinal, intended to attract the benevolent spirits while masking the presence of the onlookers. Michael watches as a group of women, dressed in vibrant kangas, begin a rhythmic chant accompanied by the deep, resonant thrum of the ngoma drums. These drums are crafted from the wood of the jackfruit tree and topped with cowhide or goat skin, tightened over a fire to achieve a specific frequency that is said to resonate with the heartbeat of the island itself. As the drumming intensifies, Michael notices a shift in the atmosphere. This is the point where the educational deep dive moves into the realm of the pipu, or spirit possession. In 2026, many Western psychologists are studying these rituals as forms of communal therapy. Michael observes a participant who appears to enter a state of deep trance, moving with a strength and agility that seems impossible for their age. Historical trends in Zanzibari sociology show that these trances often allow individuals to express grievances or desires that are socially repressed in their daily lives. The spirit speaks through the person, offering advice or demanding changes in the community's behavior. For Michael, this is a radical departure from the individualized, clinical approach to mental health in the United States. It is a collective, spiritual, and theatrical experience that places the individual within a larger cosmic framework. Furthermore, Michael explores the physical manifestations of this spiritual protection in the architecture of Stone Town. He returns to the city to examine the heavy, brass-studded doors he saw earlier. Each stud is not just a decorative element. Historical trends reveal that these were originally designed in India to prevent war elephants from battering down the gates. In Zanzibar, they took on a symbolic meaning, representing the strength and resilience of the household against both physical and spiritual intruders. He looks at the lintels of the doors, where verses from the Quran are intricately carved alongside images of lotus flowers and fish. This fusion of symbols, the fish for fertility, the lotus for purity, and the script for divine protection, is a masterclass in the syncretism that defines the island. Step by step, Michael's guide shows him how to read a door like a map of the owner's soul and status. A door with a chain carved around the frame once signified that the owner was a wealthy merchant involved in the maritime trade. A door with a date palm indicated a connection to the Arabian Peninsula. In 2026, preserving these doors has become a multi-million-dollar industry, with local craftsmen using the same hand-chiseling techniques used by their great-grandfathers. This is a case study in the preservation of intangible heritage. When an American traveler buys a miniature carved door as a souvenir, they are participating in a lineage of protection and identity that spans 3 continents. But the spiritual deep dive has a darker side that Michael must also acknowledge. He visits the ruins of Mtoni Palace, where the Sultan's wives once lived. Here, the guide speaks of the local legends of the Papa Ba, a shape-shifting creature that is said to haunt the island during times of political or social stress. For the 2026 traveler, the Papa Ba is a fascinating psychological case study in mass hysteria and the power of urban legends. It serves as a reminder that Zanzibar's beauty is balanced by a deep, sometimes unsettling mystery. The island does not give up all its secrets to the casual observer. It requires a willingness to sit in the dark and listen to the wind. As Michael stands among the crumbling coral walls of the palace, he realizes that his American perspective is shifting. He came to Zanzibar for the beaches and the spices, but he is staying for the complexity. He has seen the potential outcomes of a society that integrates its history, its biology, and its spirituality into a single cohesive identity. He understands now that a bucket list is not just about checking off destinations. It is about the internal transformation that occurs when you encounter a culture that operates on a completely different set of frequencies. But the 2026 reality of Zanzibar is not just about the past. As Michael prepares for the final leg of his journey, he hears about a new movement taking hold on the island. While the spirits and the spices remain, a new generation of digital nomads and investors from the United States and Europe are arriving, drawn by the promise of a decentralized lifestyle and the rising blue economy of the Indian Ocean. He is told of a massive project on the horizon, a futuristic city being built on the coast that aims to blend the ancient aesthetics of Stone Town with the cutting-edge technology of the mid-21st century. Tomorrow, Michael will travel to the site of the Fumba Town development and the Silicon Zanzibar initiative. He will discover how the island is positioning itself as the tech hub of East Africa, offering a case study in how a developing nation can leapfrog traditional industrialization. The masterclass is moving from the ethereal spirits of the forest to the digital spirits of the cloud. The question is no longer just why you should visit Zanzibar, but why you might never want to leave. The final chapters of this journey will reveal the economic and lifestyle opportunities that are turning this vacation destination into a permanent home for the global elite. He is about to see the future of the island, and it is more ambitious than he ever imagined. Michael drives 45 minutes from the winding, salt-eroded alleys of Stone Town toward the southwest coast of the island, and the scenery undergoes a radical transformation. In the travel landscape of 2026, the American visitor is often surprised to find that Zanzibar is not just a repository of the past, but a laboratory for the future. He pulls into Fumba Town, a multi-billion-dollar sustainable city project that serves as a definitive case study in modern African urbanism. This is not a gated community of concrete and glass. It is a master-planned 12-minute city where the architecture is built primarily from cross-laminated timber. Historical trends in the region showed that traditional construction methods were carbon-intensive and often failed to account for the tropical humidity. Fumba Town has flipped the script, utilizing sustainable forestry products from the mainland to create homes that are naturally ventilated and ecologically sound. For an American like Michael, who may be familiar with the sustainable developments in places like Portland or Austin, Fumba Town represents a familiar but elevated concept. He walks through the permaculture landscapes that weave between the apartment blocks. This is a technical triumph of edible landscaping. Step by step, the guide explains how the gray water from the residential units is filtered through a series of reed beds and used to irrigate fruit trees and vegetable gardens that provide free produce for the residents. This is the zero-waste circular economy in action. In 2026, Fumba is no longer just a construction site. It is a thriving community of over 50 different nationalities, including a significant number of American remote workers who have traded their suburban commutes for a life overlooking the turquoise waters of the Menai Bay. But the real seismic shift Michael discovers is the initiative known as Silicon Zanzibar. This is a government-backed program designed to attract tech companies and digital nomads to the island. Imagine if you could run a Silicon Valley startup from a place where your overhead is reduced by 60% and your view is a world-class beach. Historical trends in the global tech sector have seen a massive decentralization of talent, and Zanzibar has positioned itself as the premier hub for this movement in East Africa. Michael visits a co-working space that looks like something out of a futuristic design magazine. It is built entirely of bamboo and reclaimed coral stone, equipped with high-speed fiber optic internet provided by the latest subsea cables connecting the island to the global grid. He meets a software developer named Sarah, who moved from San Francisco to Zanzibar in late 2025. She explains the technical logistics of the tech visa, a streamlined residency permit for individuals working in the digital economy. This is a case study in administrative agility. Sarah can maintain her salary in US dollars while spending in the local economy, a form of lifestyle arbitrage that allows her to save for her future while living in a literal paradise. For Michael, this is a revelation. He begins to see that the potential outcomes of a trip to Zanzibar are not limited to a 2-week vacation. He is witnessing the birth of a new kind of global citizen, the tropical tech worker. The deep dive into the island's 2026 economy continues as Michael explores the blue economy. This is a strategic initiative by the Zanzibari government to move beyond traditional tourism and leverage the ocean for sustainable industrial growth. He visits a high-tech seaweed processing plant on the outskirts of Fumba. In the past, Zanzibar only exported raw seaweed for a few cents per kilogram. Today, thanks to international investment and local expertise, the island is processing the seaweed into high-value carrageenan, used in the global pharmaceutical and food industries. This transition from raw material exporter to finished product manufacturer is a masterclass in economic development. Michael watches the automated drying and milling machines, realizing that the women he saw harvesting seaweed in Nungwi are now part of a sophisticated global supply chain. Step by step, Michael learns about the sustainable fishing protocols that have been implemented in 2026. The government has partnered with international marine biology firms to deploy a network of smart buoys that monitor water temperature, salinity, and fish populations in real time. This data allows for precision fishing, ensuring that the local tuna and snapper stocks are never over-harvested. For the American traveler who cares about the ethics of their consumption, this level of transparency is a major selling point. When Michael eats a piece of grilled fish in a local restaurant, he can theoretically trace it back to the specific zone and time it was caught. Furthermore, Michael investigates the renewable energy infrastructure that powers these new developments. He travels to the site of a massive solar farm in the interior, where thousands of panels are oriented to capture the intense equatorial sun. Because Zanzibar is an island, it has historically relied on an underwater power cable from the mainland, which was prone to outages. By 2026, the push for energy independence has led to a hybrid grid that incorporates solar, wind, and even experimental wave energy converters. This technical resilience is what makes the tech hub of Silicon Zanzibar viable. Without a stable green power supply, the digital nomads would never have arrived. As the day ends, Michael sits on a terrace in Fumba, watching a group of teenagers practice capoeira on the beach. He realizes that the island is in the middle of a delicate balancing act. On one hand, you have the ancient, spiritual and historical identity of Stone Town and the Jozani Forest. On the other, you have the high-speed, sustainable and digital future of Fumba and Silicon Zanzibar. The potential outcomes of this experiment will determine the fate of the archipelago for the next century. If they can successfully integrate the old with the new, Zanzibar will become the blueprint for development across the entire global south. But as Michael looks at his map, he notices a tiny dot far to the north, even beyond Nungwi. It is an island within an island, a place that is whispered about in the most exclusive travel circles. He is told that this is Pemba, the Green Island, Zanzibar's sister to the north. While Unguja, the main island, is moving toward the future, Pemba remains locked in a state of primitive, untouched beauty. He hears rumors of underwater hotel rooms where you can sleep beneath the surface of the Indian Ocean, surrounded by the very reefs he explored. He also hears that Pemba is the true home of the island's most powerful magic, a place where the line between reality and legend is even thinner than in Makunduchi. Michael has seen the history, the nature, the food, the spirits, and the future. But he hasn't seen the ultimate luxury. He hasn't seen the place where the deep dive goes truly vertical, down into the depths of the ocean itself. Tomorrow, he will leave the mainland behind for the final time. He is heading to the most remote part of the archipelago to see if the rumors of the underwater kingdom are true. The masterclass is reaching its crescendo, and the final revelation will challenge everything Michael thought he knew about the limits of human travel. He is about to go where the light doesn't reach, and the only thing waiting for him is the silent pulse of the deep. Michael boards a small Cessna Grand Caravan at the Zanzibar domestic terminal for the 20-minute flight north to Pemba. In the travel landscape of 2026, this short hop is the final barrier between the developed tourism of the main island and the raw, unscripted wilderness of the Green Island. As the plane levels off at 5,000 feet, Michael looks down at the Pemba Channel. This is not the shallow, sandy shelf that connects Zanzibar to the Tanzanian mainland. This is a deep water trench that plunges to depths of over 800 meters. Historical trends in marine biology show that this deep water corridor is a superhighway for humpback whales, whale sharks, and manta rays. For the American traveler, this geography is the technical reason why Pemba offers some of the best drift diving on the planet, far surpassing the overcrowded sites of the Caribbean. Upon landing at the tiny Chake Airport, Michael realizes that Pemba is a case study in agricultural density. While Unguja is the spice island, Pemba is the true engine of production. There are over 3.5 million clove trees on this island alone. The scent here is not a subtle hint in the air. It is a heavy, intoxicating presence that clings to your clothes. Michael travels toward the northern tip of the island to reach the Manta Resort, home to one of the most technologically unique hotel rooms in existence. This is the underwater room, a floating Swedish-engineered structure anchored 4 meters below the surface of a blue hole in the center of a vibrant coral reef. Imagine if your bedroom was a pressurized glass bubble surrounded by a 3,600-degree view of the Indian Ocean. Michael descends the ladder into his submerged chamber. In 2026, the structural integrity and air filtration systems of these underwater habitats have been optimized for long-term stays. As he lies on his bed, he is not looking at a television. He is watching the nocturnal theater of the reef. At night, the room's external spotlights attract swarms of squid and tiny silver baitfish, which in turn attract larger predators like Spanish mackerel and jacks. This is a masterclass in marine ecology from the comfort of a high-thread count duvet. The potential outcomes of such an experience go beyond mere relaxation. It is a profound psychological immersion into an environment that remains largely alien to most humans. But the deep dive into Pemba's biodiversity continues on land. Michael joins a conservation trek to see the Pemba flying fox, Pteropus voltskowi. This is a species of giant fruit bat with a wingspan of over 5 feet and a distinctively fox-like face. Historical trends in the 1990s showed this species on the brink of extinction, with fewer than a few hundred individuals remaining due to habitat loss and hunting. However, a 2026 case study in community-led conservation has seen the population rebound to over 20,000. Michael watches as thousands of these massive creatures take to the sky at dusk, a biological spectacle that rivals the great migrations of the Serengeti. This success story is a testament to the Zanzibari government's commitment to preserving its unique evolutionary heritage while still allowing for sustainable tourism growth. Now, let us analyze the technical logistics for the American traveler planning this journey in 2026. This is the segment where we move from the dream to the data. First, the budgetary framework. A high-end, 10-day masterclass itinerary through Zanzibar and Pemba for 2 people currently ranges between $8,000 and $15,000, depending on the level of private aviation and boutique lodging chosen. When you compare this to a similar luxury itinerary in the Maldives or Bora Bora, the cost-to-value ratio favors Zanzibar by a margin of nearly 40%. You are essentially getting a 3-dimensional experience, history, culture, and nature, for the price of a 1-dimensional beach stay elsewhere. Step by step, the 2026 travel requirements for U.S. citizens are clear. You need a passport with at least 6 months of validity beyond your date of entry. While the e-visa system is efficient, Michael carries a physical backup of his yellow fever vaccination certificate, which is required if arriving from or transiting through a country with a risk of transmission for more than 12 hours. In terms of health protocols, the CDC in 2026 continues to recommend malaria prophylaxis for travelers to East Africa. Michael chooses a daily regimen that he started 2 days before arrival and will continue for 7 days after departure. He also utilizes high-concentration DEET and stays in accommodations that provide treated mosquito netting, which is the gold standard for prevention. Historical trends and safety data show that Zanzibar remains one of the safest destinations for American travelers in the region, provided standard common-sense protocols are followed. Michael utilizes a 2026 travel insurance policy that includes a specific rider for medical evacuation, a technical necessity when visiting remote islands like Pemba. He also follows the local dress code of Stone Town, which is a sign of respect for the Muslim culture. Shoulders and knees are covered when moving through the city, saving the beachwear for the resorts. This cultural agility is the secret to unlocking the true hospitality of the Zanzibari people. As Michael prepares for his final night on the island, he reflects on the synthesis of his journey. He has moved from the dark holding cells of the slave market to the futuristic sustainable timber apartments of Fumba Town. He has touched the prehistoric skin of a giant tortoise and breathed the medicinal air of a clove plantation. He has seen the potential outcomes of a nation that refuses to choose between its ancient spirits and its digital future. For the American audience, Zanzibar is not just a destination. It is a mirror. It shows us what happens when a society values its roots as much as its growth. It is a reminder that the world is still vast, still mysterious, and still capable of providing a transformative experience for those willing to look beyond the domestic horizon. The problem Michael solved for himself was the stagnation of the modern vacation. He replaced the predictable with the profound. By following this deep dive masterclass, he navigated the complexities of East Africa with the precision of a seasoned explorer. He is returning to the United States not just with photos, but with a recalibrated understanding of what it means to be a global citizen in 2026. The technical, emotional, and cultural data points he gathered will serve as his internal compass for years to come. But there is one final piece of the puzzle that Michael only discovered as he was packing his bags. He found a small, handwritten note from his guide in Pemba, mentioning a third, even smaller island in the archipelago that is not on most maps. It is a place where the tide creates a natural musical instrument out of the coral caves, producing a sound that can be heard for miles on a quiet night. This is the island of Latham, a remote seabird sanctuary that is the literal edge of the Zanzibari territory. Very few people have ever set foot there, and the permissions required are legendarily difficult to obtain. Michael realizes that his 10-part journey was just the introduction. The true deep dive into the Indian Ocean has no bottom. As he waits for his international flight back to the United States, he is already looking at the 2027 calendar. He is thinking about the safari extension across the mainland and the secret music of the coral caves. The masterclass in Zanzibar travel is never truly over. It just prepares you for the next level of the game. If you are ready to start your own case study and adventure, the first step is not booking a ticket, but changing your mind about what is possible. The archipelago is waiting, and the next part of the story belongs to you. Would you like to see the technical breakdown of the Serengeti Zanzibar Bridge itinerary?